It's 6:19 a.m. in the Caribbean Sea, 140 miles north of Venezuela. The USS Gerald R. Ford was cutting through calm waters when two dots appeared on the horizon, slicing toward her formation like knives in the sunlight. They weren't pleasure planes. They were fast and they were closing. On the flight deck, sailors paused mid-routine as the sound of distant engines broke the morning calm. The air shimmered, heat bending the light, as two Venezuelan K-8W attack jets burst through the haze barely 2,000 feet above the water. No warning, no radio call, just aggression. They banked hard across the carrier's bow, a buzz past meant to intimidate. But intimidation only works when the target reacts. The Ford didn't. From the bridge, the commanding officer watched through binoculars, unflinching. "Maintain course," he said. The Venezuelan lead jet pulled into a steep climb, afterburners flaring, trailing smoke that caught the dawn light like fire. The second followed, wings rocking. The move was too dangerous, too low, too fast, and far too close to a 100,000-ton nuclear carrier whose radar systems could track a tennis ball at 40 miles. Down in the Combat Information Center, the Ford's air controllers were already watching every frame of it on the FLIR feeds. Their screens painted the truth in infrared. Empty hardpoints, no weapons. This wasn't an attack run, it was theater. The military version of a dare. But here's the thing about dares at sea. One miscalculation, one slip in judgment, and you're not just buzzing a carrier, you're provoking a superpower. At 0621 hours, the jets turned back towards the Venezuelan coast. For a moment, it looked like it was over, but it wasn't. Because 2 minutes later, the radar picture changed, and what happened next would turn a simple flyby into an international incident. Inside the Combat Direction Center, the lights were dim, the air was thick with focus. Radar scopes glowed pale green across the wall of screens. Every operator already knew what the tracks were, two Venezuelan K-8Ws. But now, something didn't fit. "Combat, we've got a second radar return, new vector, bearing 217, high speed and climbing." Another pair. 4 contacts total, heading straight for the Ford strike group. The watch officer leaned in. "Plot it, confirm IFF." "Negative IFF, no response to hails." The room fell quiet except for the hum of consoles. But nobody panicked. They trained for this 100 times. Above deck, Air Wing 8 snapped into motion. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets were prepped for launch. Yellow shirts waved them forward. The catapult crews crouched into position. Hornet 1, wing spread, set trim takeoff, thumbs up. The shooter dropped his hand, and a blur of metal and sound ripped off the bow. The Ford's tower tracked both Hornets as they climbed into formation, banking left toward the incoming radar pings. Their task was simple: intercept, identify, and de-escalate if possible. Down below, the operations officer watched on the big screen. The range was closing fast, 60 miles, 50, 42. "Bridge, combat, recommend we tighten escort screen. Bring destroyers Mason and Thomas Hudner forward." "Approved, maintain speed and heading." The Ford didn't flinch and didn't turn. To the untrained eye, it looked like a provocation. To the Navy, it was posture. The unspoken message of American carriers for decades. We don't move for noise. By 0626 hours, the Hornets were climbing through 15,000 feet. And what they were about to see would confirm that this encounter was no accident. At 15,000 feet, sunlight hits the Hornets like fire on metal. Their engines howl against the Caribbean air as they push east, streaking towards the unknown. The lead pilot, call sign Viper 1, scans his radar display. 4 solid returns, spacing tight, altitude increasing. "Control, Viper 1. Confirm bandits, 4 contacts bearing 217, angles 16. Copy, Viper 1. Positive ID, Venezuelan K-8Ws. Rules of engagement, defensive only." "Roger that. We'll keep it clean." Below them, the USS Gerald R. Ford is a speck on the water, flanked by her destroyers in perfect diamond formation. The carrier's Spy 3 radar paints the entire sky with precision, feeding every metric, speed, altitude, vector, straight to the Hornet's cockpit data links. At 0628 hours, the two lead K-8Ws pop through a thin layer of cloud, contrails slicing through the blue. Viper 1 to contact. Identify yourself immediately. You are approaching a U.S. carrier group operating in international airspace. Static. But then a voice, thick with accent. U.S. aircraft, you are violating Bolivarian territory. You will turn away now. The Venezuelans cut across the Hornet's nose at just under 400 knots, one so close that Viper 1's helmet display flashes proximity alert. Watch your spacing, his wingman calls. Viper 1 steadies his grip. We're not here to dance, boys. Just watch the show. Back on the Ford, every radar sees it in real time. The flight paths crossing within seconds of collision. Bridge, combat, Venezuelan aircraft executing unsafe maneuvers. Copy that. Maintain calm posture, no course change. Well, one thing's clear now. This is not a mistake. It's bait. At 17,000 feet, the two Super Hornets shadow the Venezuelan formation like wolves trailing a reckless pack. The sky is bright but tense. Thin clouds gliding beneath them, the Caribbean stretching endless blue below. On Viper 1's FLIR screen, the K-8Ws drift closer to each other, tightening formation. No missiles, but open hardpoints glint under the sun. Visual intimidation, pure and simple. Control, they're crossing into our flight path again, distance 800 meters. Copy, maintain shadow posture, record everything. The Ford's E-2D Hawkeye, circling high above, feeds its radar picture directly into the Hornet's helmets. Every move, every deviation is cataloged. The carrier's crew below is silent, watching the data unfold like a live chess game. Then, one Venezuelan jet banks sharply left, breaking formation. The maneuver is fast, aggressive, and dangerously low, straight across Viper 2's nose. The American pilot's tone stays cool. Ford control, contact just executed a proximity pass, range 200 meters. Below, the Ford's Combat Direction Center tracks every angle. Spy 3 radars sweep, plotting the jets in perfect digital clarity. On the big board, the distance drops to 6 miles from the carrier. Bridge, combat, recommend alerting CRAM to standby. Affirmative, do not engage. The K-8Ws bank again, closing in tighter, almost too tight. The next pass will bring them within seconds of disaster. And this time, someone is going to make a huge mistake. 6:32 hours. Inside the USS Gerald R. Ford's Combat Information Center, every console is glowing with precision comm. Operators track 4 red icons weaving through the sky above the blue outline of the strike group. The Ford's bridge stays silent. No yelling, no chaos, just controlled focus. Contacts now within 12 miles, a radar tech calls out. Speed holding high subsonic. Copy, the tactical action officer replies. CRAM to warm standby. CWIZ manual mode. Above the deck, sailors glance skyward. They can't see the jets clearly, but they can feel the tension. Every vibration through the deck plates, every coded message over the ship's comms. The Ford holds steady, 20 knots north-northwest. The destroyers Thomas Hudner and Mason tighten their screen, forming a steel wall ahead of the carrier. Electronic warfare suites are active, quietly jamming enemy sensors just enough to muddy any targeting radar. On the flight deck, the aircrew stays in motion. Refueling hoses snap, deck handlers wave hand signals, and the launch crews stay ready for a second scramble if needed. Nobody panics. This is routine, and that's what makes it unnerving. Inside the Combat Information Center, a calm voice breaks the silence. Bridge, combat. Contacts now 8 miles, still closing. The Ford's captain steps closer to the central console, his eyes locked on the radar screen. Maintain heading. Do not alter speed. It's not stubbornness. It's doctrine. A U.S. carrier doesn't yield under pressure. The captain's words carry through the bridge. If we move for every jet that postures, the sea stops respecting the flag. Outside, the K-8Ws continue their approach, dipping low enough for their shadows to ripple across the ocean. And then, one of them dives. The Venezuelan lead jet rolls inverted at barely 1,000 feet and dives straight towards the carrier group. The second follows close, cutting through the sky like a blade. From the Ford's bridge, it looks reckless. An intimidation run gone way too far. Bridge, combat, contacts now within 5 miles, altitude dropping fast. Down below, the Phalanx Sea-Whiz turret slews automatically, its 20mm barrels tracking the lead aircraft. The system sensors detect movement faster than any human eye can blink. The only thing keeping it from firing is a silent command. Stand by. In the sky, Viper 1 and Viper 2 locked their helmets towards the Venezuelans, cameras recording everything. Through the canopy, the American pilot can see the other man's face, visor glinting, jaw tight, hands trembling on the stick. Forward control, they're coming in hot, range 1.2 miles. Copy. Hold your line, do not escalate. The first K-8W roars over the destroyer Mason's bow, engines screaming, wake turbulence rolling off its wings. The shockwave hits the sea like thunder, rocking the ship. Then, with zero clearance, it passes over Viper 2, less than 600 feet between them. Ford Tower, we've got unsafe maneuvering, Viper 2 shouts. That's a near miss. Maintain discipline, the response comes back, calm and precise. The Hornets do not react. No radar locks, no counter moves. They simply slide behind the Venezuelans, shadowing them like ghosts. On board the Ford, the Sea-Ram spins quietly, its sensors locked but silent. The entire strike group holds its breath. For 10 seconds, both sides hang in that impossible balance. One false move away from catastrophe. Then, almost anticlimactically, the K-8Ws pull up and bank away, engines fading toward the southern horizon. The sea goes quiet again, but nobody relaxes just yet. At 0637 hours, the radar picture begins to change. The Venezuelan jets, once charging head-on, now peel away from the formation. One turns east toward the mainland, the other lingers just a little too long, circling wide like it wants one last look. Bridge, combat, Contact 1 retreating, Contact 2 maintains altitude 9,000 feet. Copy, maintain tracking, hold posture. Ford's Combat Information Center doesn't blink. Every camera, radar, and FLIR feed stays locked on that departing target, and even as they fade, the systems record everything. Their heat signatures, their flight profiles, radio emissions, nothing is wasted. Up in the sky, the Hornets keep their distance. Viper 1 to control, hostiles turning south, speed decreasing, no visual weapons. Copy, Viper 1, continue shadow, do not pursue past 50 miles. From his cockpit, Viper 1 watches the smaller jets disappear into the hazy blue horizon. For a moment, it's almost peaceful, just the hum of engines and the endless Caribbean below. Then he catches something on his radar scope. A faint spike in emissions. One Venezuelan jet just pinged the carrier group with a targeting radar. Brief, but deliberate. Forward, be advised, we were painted. Copy that, log the pulse, no response required. The Ford doesn't react. No evasive turn, no flares, just data collection and discipline. Minutes later, the Venezuelans vanish from radar entirely. The Ford maintains course, speed 20 knots, heading north-northwest. But the story isn't over, because just an hour later, Venezuelan state television airs grainy footage of the same jets claiming they forced the American carrier to retreat. The world sees propaganda. The Navy sees a different truth. The Ford never turned an inch. And somewhere in that calm, disciplined silence lies the real power of a carrier strike group. By midday, the incident was already echoing across international news. Venezuelan officials hailed it as a sovereign air patrol, while Washington called it unsafe and unprofessional. The truth sat somewhere in between, in that thin line between deterrence and provocation. Inside the Pentagon's morning brief, analysts replayed the FLIR footage frame by frame. Every maneuver, every radio call, every second of that 600-foot pass was logged. What they saw wasn't a calculated attack, it was a show of force gone wrong. A political message written in afterburners and altitude warnings. For naval strategists, this wasn't new. These kind of encounters, gray zone tactics, are designed to test reactions, to measure just how close you can fly before a superpower blinks. And the Ford didn't blink. The carrier's restraint sent a different kind of message. Not one of fear, but of control. Anyone can pull the trigger. Discipline is harder. That's what keeps small provocations from turning into global incidents. The Ford represents the cutting edge of naval power. Electromagnetic catapults, stealthy radar profiles, and a command network that can link every sensor across the fleet. Yet her most important weapon isn't technology, it's judgment. Out here, things can go from calm to chaos in mere seconds. One wrong move, one proud pilot, and the world's most advanced warship suddenly finds itself one heartbeat away from international crisis. The Venezuelan jets wanted to send a message. The USS Gerald R. Ford answered with silence. The kind of silence only a real power can afford. Because the truth is, power at sea isn't just about missiles or fighter jets. It's about judgment, timing, and discipline. And the Ford showed all three. So here's the question for you, my friends. If you were in that cockpit watching two foreign jets diving toward your carrier at full speed, what would you do? Would you hold your line and trust the rules of engagement? Or would you take the first shot just to be safe? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to see how you'd handle that call. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Hit like if you learned something new, subscribe if you want to see more, and share this video with someone who thinks aircraft carriers are just big boats. And hey, if you want to go a step further and support the channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and you'll help us bring more true maritime stories to the surface. Just click join over on our channel page and get on board with us. Because when it comes to keeping calm in rough waters, the Gerald R. Ford just proved one thing. You don't need to shout when you're the loudest thing on the ocean. I'll see you in the next one.